All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started today, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining us today as we kind of talk key hires as a growing church. We're really excited to have you guys here. But before we get started, if you guys have never been a part of one of these LeaderCasts, first off, welcome. Thank you for joining us and tuning in to what we're doing today. So excited to have you. But just a little bit of format housekeeping tips before we jump into it here. Would love for you to be on, have your video up, love to see your faces, but let's keep our mics muted during the time where Pastor Chris will be sharing his content. There will be time for Q&A, so you'll be able to unmute, jump on, interact then, but just for best practice and for everybody else, let's just keep our mics muted in the meantime, and then we'll have a time to jump in. But we have some great things happening through the network that we're really excited about. As always, we're doing LeaderCasts each and every month on different topics throughout the church world, everything from kids, youth, to executive leadership, church leadership. So we have tons of offerings, and we're always open to hearing what you guys want to hear about, what you guys want to talk about. So please drop us a line, network@rivervalley.org, an email letting us know some feedback. You'll get feedback after this. But we'd love your input as we continue to sharpen those offerings for you guys, because we're here to serve you. We're here for you guys, and we love to hear and collaborate with you guys. But a couple things coming up through the network. I went ahead and dropped in the link for some events. We have some roundtables coming up, and our annual summits we have. This fall, we have a worship roundtable, missions roundtable, kids, youth, so some great offerings coming up there. We'd love for you and your team to be a part of those. And we have 2 leadership summits. We have one in Detroit and one in Allison Park, Pennsylvania. So if you're in those areas, we'd love for you guys to be a part. Come out, enjoy time connecting with other pastors in that region, and hearing their hearts for the communities in there, and just sharpening each other's leadership. But also, we have the Assemblies of God has General Council coming up this August. So we have a booth there. The network has a booth, and so we'll be present there. Would love to see you guys. Would love to connect with you. See you at General Council. So if you're around, come by the exhibit hall, visit us all during General Council. So we'll be there all week, and would love to see you. But before we get started, we'd love to just hear from you guys, hear where you're from, jump on. Love for you to introduce yourself and tell us what you do at the church or what your role is at the organization that you're at. And just hear from you guys, hear who we have on today. I know we have a little bit smaller group, but we'd love to hear from you guys. So, Kelly, I see that you're on there. Would you want to jump on and kick us off first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kelly from Owasso First Assembly, Associate Pastor, Executive Pastor here in Oklahoma, Tulsa area.
Carrie, I see you're on there. You want to jump on? Where are you tuning in from today?
Yep, Kerry Van Hamer from Ottumwa, Iowa, the Bridge Church. I'm the Executive Director of Operations.
Awesome. Glad you're here. You guys brought like a busload to conference this year. You guys had like a whole tour bus going. Love it. Love it. Who else do we have here? Mark, you want to jump on?
Sure. Mark Borkart, Victory Assembly in Gothenburg, Nebraska.
Awesome. Do we have anybody else out there? Don't want to miss anybody before we go ahead and get started today with Pastor Chris.
Marty Schmidt, I'm bumping on. I'm here. I just had to find a shirt. You wanted me to, if you have to see video, you got to find a shirt. No. Bridge Church, Ottumwa, Iowa. And yeah, thanks for having us.
Love it. Love that you're here, man. Love it. So, well, without further ado, Pastor Chris Book is our executive pastor of Central Ministries here. He oversees a multitude of different teams, from youth, communications, to kids. Has really brought great leadership structure to our central teams here and what we're doing. So we love the leadership that he has to bring and offer. And so we're so honored to have him here today with us, sharing some insights as we walk through some of these more technical pieces of the church world and hiring, and maybe not the glamorous side of church, but the very well needed and a part of church. So without further ado, would love to hand it off to Pastor Chris.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, yeah, I was actually joking with Don and Eric before. It's like, yeah, you guys always give me the real sexy things to talk about, like hiring and firing, not like how to cast vision and raise money for missions. But I get the fun stuff that really matters, right? But no, I'm actually happy to be here. Like you said, I've been here at the church for about a year and a half now. Done executive pastor at another church before that. I've been a youth ministry guy for probably 10 years, planted a church. So I've gotten to see church from a lot of different angles, and gotten to do a lot of hiring, and unfortunately some firing. And so I've learned a lot. Just some of the principles that I've learned and some of the questions I get from people along the way, I'd love to share. My goal is probably talk for about 20 minutes or so, and then we can engage in some Q&A, all that kind of stuff. So whatever. And my hope is that, guys, this really could be a dialogue throughout. So if you want to stop me on anything, go ahead and unmute, and let's just make it a dialogue, because hiring is probably one of the most important things we're going to do in the church, and this is not something we can afford to get wrong. So I'm just going to kick it off with a quick story, I guess. My second job was as a youth ministry guy. I was a youth ministry pastor at a Lutheran church in the metro area here. Huge church, and had a huge youth ministry. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I had 6.5 staff members plus myself to do the work of the ministry, and I was actually blown away by it. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven, like I said. It was great. And so I did everything that I had done previously to kind of get me to where I was. I did all the preaching, I did all the teaching. Every Monday, I'd sit down with my team and say, okay, you need to do this week. You need to do. I gave everyone their to-do list, their tasks that they could do. And about 6 months in, and we hadn't really experienced any growth. It was a good youth ministry, not a great youth ministry. But about 6 months in, my boss, who's one of the most gentle Norwegians you'll ever meet in your life, came in and in the most polite way possible changed my entire world. He said this, and I'm not exaggerating for the sake of a video. He said this. He goes, Chris, I think you might have misunderstood why we hired you. We didn't actually hire you to do the youth ministry. We look at you as the grandpa. We want you to develop the team to do the youth ministry. Now, I was 30. I was 30 at the time when he called me the grandpa of the youth ministry. But for whatever reason, something clicked in me. The light bulb went on in me, and I went, oh my goodness, I'm not the guy supposed to do the ministry anymore. I'm supposed to be the guy to develop the people to do the ministry. Well, long story short, when I stopped preaching, when I stopped leading, and I stopped doing all the things that I thought I had to do as a youth guy, our youth ministry almost doubled within a year. So the moral of the story is that when you don't have me preaching, your youth group grows. I mean, that's kind of what I was taking away from that. But what was really happening was that I was investing more into the team, freeing them up to do their jobs. All of a sudden, ministry began to happen. Ministry began to flourish, and I looked at my job a whole lot differently. When I looked at my job is to give people platform to do their jobs, as opposed to take the platform to do my job. My goodness, the ministry blew up, and that's really what we're talking about here today. And if you're on this Zoom, if you're on this meeting, then that's your job too. Your job is to make sure that you're giving other people the platform to do ministry, to put together teams to do the ministry. And it's a challenging thing because most of us didn't sit in HR seminars in college. Most of us sat theology classes, right? And so we don't always know how to do those things. And so more often than not, to accomplish the goal that either our bosses or the elders of our church are wanting to accomplish, we're hiring team, we're hiring people, and the people we hire can absolutely sink or swim us. We all know that. That's all super basic, but hiring sounds fun. Hiring is fun when you know what you're doing. The problem is, like I said, most of us sat theology classes, not HR seminars, so we don't necessarily have an approach to how we do hiring, all that kind of stuff. So I just want to take some time and really talk through all the questions I receive on a pretty regular basis, as far as what do you do before you hire, what do you do as you're hiring, and even once you're done hiring, what do you do with your team? And so if I can just break it down into those three, and like I said, we can actually have a lot of discussion about this, that'd be great, because and this isn't the humble brag kind of thing. We do not do it right 100% of the time. And so when you guys see things, when you hear things like, oh, no, we do it better than that, please let us know, because we're trying to find our way around in the dark at times on this as well. But I would say first, before you hire, it's all about where do you find your people, right? I know that's what everyone's thinking. Do you hire from within? Do you hire from without? It's just so elementary, but the best we can do is absolutely leverage our internal pipelines. It's elementary level, it's management 101, but who is the emerging leader in your organization that you can take a chance on? So when you're thinking where do I find the people I want to hire? I would say first and foremost, you want to look inside. Most people, and I've just come to this, most people are not natural networkers. I am not a natural networker. I do not like having my head on a swivel all the time. I don't like always looking at people's potential marks. And so what I began to do is when I go to a network event or when I go to a conference or whatever, I have a pocket full of cards and I'm just dropping hints all the time because we're always looking to hire somebody. And so if you don't have that person internally and you're not going to a conference or a network event or something, looking to hire people, I would just say start doing that, because a lot of the hires you get are going to be from the people you talk to. It's the friends of the people you talk to who they know you're making a transition. And if you say that I really don't have a network, and call the big churches, call the other big churches in your area. Here's one thing I found 100% of the time. Big churches always have people in transition. The church I was at here before I got here, we actually transitioned about a third, probably about 40% of the staff at one point. Right when my boss got there, we just made some wholesale changes to what we were doing. And what happened was other churches got a hold of that. They got wind of that, and they began calling me left and right, saying, well, what about this? What about this? What about this person? And it was just this real powerful reminder to me that churches are always in transition. They're always having people. We're more of an airport, right? People are always taking off, and they're always landing, and they're always taking off. And we should always be utilizing other churches' people in a correct and integrity-filled way, but we should always be utilizing other people if we're going to hire from without. But the big question I get, I'd say 90% of the time when it comes to hiring is, when do I know if I'm going to hire from within, or when do I know if I hire from the outside? And I would say there's pros and cons to each of those. There's DNA fit versus professional competency. We have to look at those things. But here's a principle I try and follow. I'm just going to read it off my notes. If I feel the need to change things up, I generally hire from the outside. If I like the way things are, I promote from within. Like any management book will tell you the same thing. But I have a litmus test that I try and follow. If I like the way the department has been led, then I typically hire from within, because I know that leadership always reproduces itself. So I know that I can expect more of the same results. But if I don't like the way the department's been led, then what I try and do is be really intentional about hiring from without. Now, that's not necessarily outside your organization. If your church is big enough and departments are big enough, then that can always mean different departments. But usually what I try and avoid doing is, if I don't like the way a church has been or a department's been led, I try to fight the urge to hire the faithful servant that's been there for a number of years, who's kind of waiting for their chance. Because all I know, instinctively, I know that all they've done is they've taken on the leadership persona, the leadership behaviors, the principles of the person they've been working for. So if it's, I don't like the way they've been doing it, and I want to bring about some wholesale change, you can't hire their downline, you can't hire their key volunteers, because you're going to get more of the same. Now, if I do determine that I want to hire internally, there's 4 questions I typically ask myself. And they're pretty general questions, and they're real subjective, but it's just the filter that I try and use when I'm hiring. One is, do they think big? If they only think, how can I manage my department as is, I'm not really interested in them. It doesn't make them a bad person, doesn't make them a bad leader, but our orientation here at the church is towards growth and towards moving forward. And so I need people to think bigger than where they're at right now. I ask, are they progressive? Are they progressive in their methods, not necessarily their theology? We tend to be pretty conservative theologically, but are they progressive? Are they a union rep, or are they a leader? And what I mean by that is pretty simple. When leadership is asking for departments to do something, every once in a while you kind of get the union rep mentality. Like, hey, here's why my department can't do that, and you think that the leader of the department is kind of repping for them to leadership. And what I want is I want the leader of the department to say, guys, we're going to break through the barriers of why you think we can't do this, and then we're going to go on. So every once in a while you get that union rep mentality, and it becomes more of a, here's why we can't do what you want, versus here's why we can do what you want. Now, obviously, there are going to be problems, and sometimes we ask people to solve $100,000 problems with $50,000, and we need to address that, and leadership can't be blind to that. But I want the leaders, if I'm going to hire from outside, I want the leaders, or if I'm going to hire from inside, I want the leaders that I know are going to be the ones who are concentrating on or focusing their time on how to break through the barriers, rather than here's why my department can't get done what you're asking us to do. That makes sense? That's probably pretty simple. And the other big thing for me is, are they a developer or are they a doer? If when I see them work, all they're doing is doing their work, that's a big challenge for me. And I know I can't put them in a leader position. And we'll get to that more in a couple of minutes. But when I look at them doing their work, if they've always got 2 or 3 people around them, they're always trying to recruit someone to help them, I go, okay, they're a developer. They know what they're talking about. And I just know the future of the church, this is where I see it going. This is very conspiratorial, and I understand. But I think whether it's in 10 years, 20 years, whether it's a generation from now, I think the government is coming after our tax exemption, and I think we're going to have to cut massive numbers of our staff. And the people that know how to develop other people and bring out more in an austere climate are the people that you're going to want to keep around. So we're making the commitment here at River Valley, just as a principle. We want to hire way more developers than doers. And like I said, we'll get into that in a couple minutes. Now when you talk about, I'm kind of going through some of this quickly so we get to the Q&A, but when you talk about what are the kinds of people, like what kind of person do you need to hire, it's kind of a big statement, I guess, but I wrote down, I think that I'm convinced that the vast majority of our hiring mistakes occur here. Before we even get into the hiring process, we're making a mistake and we're going down the wrong path for even the people we want to hire, because we're not even thinking through what kind of person that we need to hire. It's that doer versus that developer, and we need to ask that question before we write a job description, before we write a position profile. I like to step back and say, okay, is this a doer or is this a developer? Now, both are needed. They really are. And I'm not downplaying the need of a doer, but they grow the church very differently. A doer, they concern themselves with doing the work of the ministry, and they're going to position you to grow incrementally. But the developer, they look at their job to give other people platform to do ministry. They're actually going to develop. They're going to position the church to grow exponentially. And this is a Sam Chan teaching. There's nothing original this to me. I want to be clear on that. But he helped me frame this a couple years ago. So I'm gonna throw this up here. You guys can take a look at this. You get it? It's a little blurry. But basically, he's got. If you look at Jesus' model, he had 3 different levels. He had your A level, your B level, and your C level. He had your thinkers up top. You have your organizers and your doers. And I would just say, make sure you know what position that you're hiring for. So more often than not, and what I mean by the doers is these are the people that are active in ministry. These are the people that they're your youth leaders, they're your kids leaders, they're your head ushers. They're doing all the work for the ministry. Your organizers are going to be more your department heads, the people who are organizing and coming up with a plan, and your thinkers, that's going to be your leadership team. That's going to be your executive pastors, where all of you sit. Your lead pastor is kind of coming up with the overall direction and tone of the church. You might not come up with all the strategy, but you are the thinker saying, this is where we're heading. And then that kind of B level, they're the ones who are organizing the ministry. Now, what I see happening all the time, and when I say all the time, that's not hyperbolic. I mean it. It happens all the time, is that we take someone who's in that C level, kind of the doer, and we see a ministry gift in them, and unfortunately, we equate that gift to ministry calling, and then we say, great, you have a ministry calling, we have an open position, and so we're gonna put you into our organizer. We're gonna make you a department, and we're gonna make you a youth pastor or a kids pastor. You're gonna be head of connections, and you've got people who are passionate about doing ministry, and all of a sudden they're a fish out of water. Now we have someone in a leadership position whose first instinct is to do ministry rather than develop people to do ministry. And when we do that, we are dead in the water, because we've just put a lower leadership lid on whatever department it is that we're working with. And I'm convinced absolutely convinced that the average church is 75 because of this. Our churches are filled with well-meaning men and women who have a passion for ministry, but maybe not a leadership call in their life. And we put them at the A level, put them at the thinker level, or even the organizer level, when they were making great money and they were happy and raising their families just doing ministry. And I think as a church, we've done a disservice to people by hiring people and putting them up too much too quickly. So my thought is really simple. You never hire a doer, no matter what their capacity is, and you put them, no matter what their capacity, you never hire a doer and put them in a leadership capacity, because they're going to shrink your capacity and they're going to shrink your church in the long term. But you can absolutely hire a developer and put them in a doer role, but you just need to be able to, you need to be ready to promote them quickly, whether that be in title, in position, rank, pay, whatever that is, whatever your organization looks like. You can hire developers and put them wherever, with the idea that you're going to run them through the organization pretty quickly. But you don't want to hire those doers, no matter how high their leadership capacity is. You don't want to put them in leadership positions. It's important to have doers. And I'd say at my last church I was at, I swung the pendulum way too far on the developer side. So we had developer after developer after developer and sharp people with no one to do the work of the ministry. And we spun our wheels until we started hiring some good quality admin doing that. So I would say that this principle here is probably the one that affects churches the most. This magnifies the more your organization, the more your church grows. If you're a single site large church, you can actually have a longer runway to make this change. You actually have a longer runway for this not to affect you. But if you are a multi-site church, you're living this reality right now, because your doers, you can, even as I'm saying this, you're probably thinking of all your doers going, oh my goodness, they are absolutely putting a cap on our ministry. And so I would just encourage you to look deep and hard at the people you have. And even before you, like I say, even before you hire, you identify, am I going to do is this a doer or is this a developer position? So that's all before you hire. As you hire, I just want to suggest how do you interview? I get people asking me that a lot. How do we interview here at the church, or how do I interview personally? And this is something, again, that churches don't do a ton of, but I just say it's an absolute must to have a static set interview process. And what I mean by that is this: any candidate that you want to take through a process, you want to have them go through what kind of testing is it that you want? We do Myers-Briggs, we do the DISC profile, we do strengths finders, we do emotional intelligence, we test on all those things. I wouldn't say we test, no, when I say we do those to varying degrees, and we're working on shoring that up and just kind of institutionalizing that. But I do think that during a set interview process, we absolutely want to be testing people's, not just their spiritual gifts, but their leadership gifts, their temperament, their personality, all those different things. And when you hire, let's say you hire 5 staff in a year, this might cost you a couple $1,000s to do. So it can get a little costly, but I think it's extremely important because of the relational nature in which we in church work like to hire. Data doesn't lie, and so I just say let the data confirm the bias you have or don't have against someone. We hire in church work, we hire people we like, we hire people we're comfortable with, we hire people we know, we hire people based on gut feelings, and all too often we have to then have the conversations about, oh my goodness, how do we transition this person off the team because they aren't a good fit? And I just think when you go through a testing process, it's going to show us pretty quickly whether this person can be a fit or not. But then when you get to the interview process, I'd say you need to have a set interview process as well. And I like to have a minimum of 3 and probably a maximum of 5 interviews that I like to do with people. Not that I personally need to do. I don't do a lot of interviewing anymore. But I do think there needs to be a one-on-one interview with the direct supervisor. I think everyone does that. It's pretty typical. One thing I don't see churches do as often, and I'd like to see more of it, is if they did a ministry team interview. So if a single site youth pastor is coming in, then I think the entire support team should get to know them. And surprisingly, I don't see that a lot. A lot of people, it's just the pastor, I like them, I want to hire them, and we're going to go for it. So I think there's a ministry team interview. If you have an HR department, I think that's absolutely essential just to go through some of the legal we're dealing right now, and this is on the volunteer side, but people that do want to become staff, we're dealing with people that, as we've done background checks, they're just some bad background checks, and there's no way we can hire these people. And so we're letting HR handle, I guess, discharging them from our interview process right now. But HR is gonna think through things, and they're gonna ask the tough questions that you probably don't want to ask or that don't even know to ask. So HR would be great. Area of expertise. If youth pastor is hiring an admin, my goodness, we know what happens, right? Admin, or they hire the person they want, they hire the faithful youth leader, and they're no good at admin. And so I always love admins hiring other admins. It's a super important thing, because they're gonna think of different things, and they're gonna see different gifts or different lack of gifts that other people don't necessarily see. And always, church leadership, I still think, no matter how big or small your organization is, I think church leadership should be interviewing people pretty much at all levels of the organization. And I would just say, when it comes to the interview process, most guys I've talked to that do hiring, they like to hire one person, or they like to interview one person at a time. And I just think that's a mistake. I know there's personal preferences, but I would just say, if I could implore you to do anything, be patient and cast the net really wide, because there are a lot of people that want to work at your churches. They just might not know about the opportunity. We just tend to like hiring our friends, and that's kind of where we go with that. During the interview process, again, I'm kind of hitting the relational side because it's important. I just know that the less I know a person, the more I want to interview them. But the more I know a person, the more I trust the person I want to hire, the more I want others to interview them, because my confirmation bias is so hard to overcome. I just know that I know that this person's going to be amazing, but I have a relationship. I prayed at the altar with this person. I went to camp. This person and I went to school together. I have blind spots all over about this person that I want to hire. So the more I know someone, the more I tend to take myself out of the interview process. I let them sell themselves. You just can't ever force candidates on people, and every leader knows this. I think they know this up here, but they don't necessarily know it down here. Your words weigh 500 pounds, and everyone else's words weigh 50 pounds. Mitigate that by not forcing your picks on other people. Let them sell themselves. Because when you come in and you say, hey, I really like this person, I'd like to hire this person, tell me if they're a bad hire or not. Well, that's almost impossible for someone in a lower staff position to say, well, boss, I think you're wrong. I don't like this person because of this, because you already said you like them. So what I'm looking for when I hire, and this is elementary as it gets, 3 C's, baby. I look for character, competency, and chemistry, right? It's just the simple Venn diagram. And what I try and do is I try and interview, or I try and set an interview process that identifies character, the competency side, and then on the chemistry, I just like to see if they can hang out with their team and like us. At River Valley, at least, we're pretty big sticklers. We have a term called leaning in. We want people to be raving lunatics about our church. We want people to love our church, maybe not for who we are, but for at least what we could be. And we want, so that chemistry piece is important. The character piece, I mean, come on, this is ministry. We know it's important, but that the competency, it's so important. So I just designed my interview process around those 3 things, and really trying to go from there. Now, again, on the confirmation bias, most people have a preference for one of the 3. So if I'm doing the bulk of the hiring, then I know I tend to focus more on, me personally, I tend to focus more on the competency, and I don't care as much about the chemistry, and I just assume character is good if they're at a church. Well, it's a bad way to do it. And I'm not saying that as a theoretical example. That's what I do. I want the competency more than I want the other things. And because I tend to look at that, I see the filter there. And if a person's competent, I go, they can make it. And so that's why I want campus pastors. In our setting, I want a campus pastor to look at a guy, even if it's a central hire, I want campus pastors to look at a guy. I want an admin who's going to be working with this person, maybe not directly, but indirectly. I want everybody weighing in on this decision, because my confirmation bias really is so hard to overcome. So it's actually been about 25 minutes, and I want to respect all your time. So I'm just going to stop right here and see if we have questions, anything you guys want to dialogue on, ask. whatever. So
Yeah, I think Marty had one. Marty, if you want to jump on and ask that question, go for it.
Yeah, I guess. Can you hear me?
yep.
Not sure if you can. All right. So I guess I'm wondering if you can indicate ways to identify the difference between a doer versus a developer on an outside hire. You know, on the inside hire, you got history. With the new person, a lot of the questions are they're going to share what they do. So could you give me some insight on clever questions that expose leader and developer versus doer and union?
Yeah, it's tough. It really is. I would say what I typically do is I set it up from the start. Like, hey, this is a developer. If I catch you doing ministry, you're not going to have a job here long. And so I just talk about their past work experience. What have you done? And when you ask them to talk about what they've done, it comes through real clear whether they focus on developing people or doing people. So if I just get them talking about their previous job, honestly, it sounds simple, but that's really all I need, because I can tell right there if they're a doer or developer. And so I'll press on that, saying, okay, so you told me a lot of the things you've done. So you preached a lot of sermons, you grew a youth ministry, you fill in the blank, but what I haven't heard you talk about is all the leaders you've developed or the leaders you've recruited. So if I feel like it's a little more on the doer side than the developer side, then I'll go down, I'll say, hey, tell me about the last 5 leaders that I don't even say discipled anymore. I used to say that. It's a really intense word. It's a really heavy word for a lot of people. So I'd say, hey, talk to me about the last 5 leaders you've developed and then have released in the ministry. Talk to me about those, whether that be full-time staff, part-time staff, or just they've taken on volunteer jobs in the church or whatever that looks like. And so I'll just say, take me through the last 5 leaders that you developed, and I'm just telling you, 9 times out of 10 they hang themselves because they've never done it, and it becomes they kind of bluff their way through it. And I know, okay, this would be a good support person. This would be, and when I say support, it's not just an administrative assistant. Like, hey, this person could be great in the production world where we need someone not just mixing sound, but we need someone running cables and doing, whatever that looks like. Because churches do need doers, but just far fewer of them. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it is. I think maybe a switch to the other side on an internal hire. What are some ways that you can leverage giving them some chances to show they can develop? Obviously, we have them in a doer role.
Yeah.
We know them. We see potential. Without bringing them on in more capacity, how do you? I think in children's ministry, student ministry are primary, and our wheelhouse is like, how do you expose the doer actually has developer in them or not?
Yeah, I think if you're comfortable in your church doing it this way, a lot of churches wouldn't do it this way, but you say, hey, I see some leadership potential in you, and over the next 3 months, if you're ever interested in a job, over the next 3 months, I would love to put some goals in front of you to see if you can do some of these things so that we could bump you up to a leader position. Now, a lot of churches they're so tight and they're so kind of close-fisted with the hiring that they don't want to do that just because, well, what if the money falls off, we're not able to hire the person and we don't want to offend this person. But I just think the more openly you can talk to people and say, hey, I've got a goal for you in the next 3 months. I want you to recruit 5 more leaders and release them into ministry and see if we can do that. Because I would tell you in our organization here, centrally at least, some of our best developers are actually sitting in admin chairs right now. And I'm looking for jobs for them. And as leadership jobs open up, we're going to be recruiting from them, asking, because you can just see it. You can see as they're doing their admin jobs, they've got 10 volunteers coming in to help them do the work. I go, my goodness, this person is a no-brainer. So whether that means they're going to be a department head pastor or they can be one of our managers or whatever, I naturally see them doing, if they're a developer, they're just going to be doing it overall. But, and I took this from 2 years ago, I think, from the Andy Stanley Leadership Podcast. They have, it's called The Delegation Dilemma. It's a 2-month, 2-part podcast on delegation. And it's just kind of how do you step into delegating to people? And so one is, I think the first level was just, hey, watch me do it. Second level was, now that you've watched me, I'm going to give you a piece of it. Third level is, now that I've given you a piece of it, I'm going to kind of give you the whole enchilada. And the fourth thing is, you don't even need to report to me anymore. I'm just going to trust you in this area of ministry. I think if you can just give people little steps, little goals, and you're going to see real quickly if they're going to hit them or not, and you'll be able to figure out if they're developers. I would say though, on internal hires, you've seen what you're going to see, and you've seen their true colors pretty much right away. Even if they are not in the developer position, they're in the doer position, you're going to see them developing people because it's just in them where it's not.
That's great. Good stuff. Anybody else? Do you guys have any other questions? Love for you to jump on and ask those at this point.
I got another one. You said you have a test for emotional intelligence. What is that test?
So the book Emotional Intelligence 2.0, it has a survey in the back of it. I think it's like a $12 or $13 book. So I ask people to take that. And I would never use that to qualify or disqualify a person from a job. Similar to the Strengths Finders test, that's more how are you going to react versus Strengths Finders is how are you going to react to something, whether are you going to be able to succeed at something. It's similar. So Emotional Intelligence 2.0, it's a great kind of high level view of a person, is whether you get it or not. And usually you don't give that test to someone unless you have questions, right? I mean, until you have questions about people, you typically don't start testing on emotional intelligence, because you go, man, I've just seen this person interact with that team or that person in the church so poorly. I'm questioning their ability to interact with people. So that's when I'll typically give the test. I mean, before I was doing it as a standardized part of the hiring process for me, I would do it as I was seeing problems with people. But yeah, so that's what I do, Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and it gives you a real good 30,000 foot view of a person's EQ.
Any other questions that we have? Marty, I would love to hear too. What are some things? Oh, do we have a question? Don't want to miss anybody. Marty, what are some key things that you guys do as you look to hire, as you guys look, because we really want this to be a collaborative field. We want to hear from you guys. We don't want to just push content to you. What are some key things that you guys look at or measure or have your pulse on? Where do you pull from? Do you network? Do you have a pipeline internally? Internship program? What are some things that you guys do there?
Yeah, I would say networking is probably the primary way that we have pursued our hires. And we have a parent church that's 45 minutes up the road. And that's where I was a youth pastor at. And I would say 5 of our hires were in my youth ministry. And so, there's 40% of our staff, 35% of our staff has come from people I actually was already mentoring and developing way back when they were in 6th grade and 8th grade. Like Carrie would be an example of that. I think the other one is this, being exposed. I was telling Carrie, we got to quit going off my gut. And so that's why we're tapping in here, because my gut has gotten us so far. We've gotten a couple wrong. We've gotten a lot right. At some point we need to dial it in more. But I think the third one for us has been, we've been doing, we call it summer staff. You could call it internship program, and it's 3 months long. It's basically 10 weeks. We bring in 7 people. We pay them for 20 hours of work, and we say we have up to 40 hours. If you want to volunteer the other 20, you can. You don't have to. And we've been hiring out of our summer staff now for 3 straight years, and we just put them to work. We had our pulse on someone. We're like, ooh, they could be a really great hire. And 2 weeks in, we're like, we would never hire them. Never hire them. So we were able to create test opportunities for some of these people. So those are our 3 primary ways we've hired.
That's awesome. I love it. Anyone else have a real defined pipeline or an internship program that you do the bulk of your hiring from? Okay. Yeah, I mean, that right there is pretty indicative, I think, of where most churches are at, and that's why hiring becomes such a hard thing, because most of your hires then, as a result, do come from the outside, do come from other recommendations. And I'd say maybe 10% of our hires right now are coming internally from our actual internship pipeline. But most of it still is just, it's our own personal networks, and we're calling people and, well, you're in transition, great. And I think it's a weakness of ours, and we're trying to we want all of our campus pastors to come from the house. And I would say, I'm just trying to think through real quickly, our last campus pastor did not, probably only half of our campus pastors, which we would identify as the most important hires in our organization, they're not from within, they're from without. And that DNA fit takes a long time. It just takes so much longer. So if I can encourage you to do anything, summer staff, internship programs, whatever that looks like, you do not have time not to invest in that. It's just so important.
Yeah.
My thought.
That's been good for us. One of our issues right now is we have probably I've outlined easily 5 spots where we could hire. Budget allows for, 5 part-times, but a couple of these would be beneficial if they were full-time. If we were to go to like the thinker, the top 3, what are some ways that you have discerned who gets when, if that makes sense? How do we prioritize who gets hired next? I mean, for us, we could use a children's ministry person, a finance person, a connections pastor, right? So like all of them I would say are critical. What are questions that are asked at the top level to help discern?
I would just say, obviously your leadership needs to be in place first. Finance, it's not as fun and it's a little trickier, but you can always outsource that until you find the right person. But if you're telling me we need a kids person, so if you go music, kids, youth, those are, I put music, then kids and youth, those are going to be kind of 2, 3, and 4 outside your top position. And then your connections pastor, it's important, it really is, but it is more of a niche role that a sharp volunteer could fill for a while. So I would just prioritize it like that: music, kids, youth, and then your associate or connections person, and then really the finance. Until you're running $5, $6, $7 million in income on a year, the idea that person is going to be top priority isn't real high. You need that person, but you need those kind of those protein staff first, the ones that are really going to do the work of the ministry for you. So I'd say we don't necessarily have questions or kind of a filter that we work through, other than we absolutely know, we know that those are, when we plan a campus, it's campus pastor, it's music, then it's kids, and then it's everybody else.
So, Pastor Chris, we had a question come in the chat. We do a 3-tiered leadership process that helps identify doers, developers. I guess it's not a question, it's more of a statement, but this may be widely used or known. We do a 3-tiered leadership process that helps identify doers, developers, and thinkers. Then from those levels, we are able to hire the role we need depending on the responsibility.
So awesome. So
Can you elaborate about that?
Well, yeah. So that I think I saw that come in from Joe. So Joe, how do you identify the thinkers out of that? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. Thanks again for putting this on, guys. We kind of do an entry-level volunteer position, which is a pretty streamlined, easy process for people to come in, and really they're managing or handling stuff. Whether it's something to do in a cafe, or just helping set up stacked chairs, or just cleaning snacks or stuff in the back room for Kids Connect or whatever. And then through that period of time where we're identified some of the leadership principles that we really look for in the associate minister in that role, we'll then invite that volunteer into a leadership role, and then there is some training that goes along with that. So it's our pastor's Accelerate Leadership course, and it kind of invites them into a higher way of thinking, and it points out some of those leadership principles that we find in Scripture. And they kind of go through that approval process, and then they'll step into a role where they're leaders, and those leaders are then given responsibility to lead the volunteers that were kind of the entry-level person that they used to be in. then if they're really successful and we identify that, they're leading leaders, but they could also lead, leaders at a higher level. There's a third tier, which are called directors at our church. And we allow them to just be, it's almost as if they are the ministers themselves, just empowering them to do and lead and walk in their callings and giftings. And so when it comes hire time, depending on what role we're looking, we have those 3 different defined levels of leadership that make it easy to find the doers, the developers, or the thinkers. So if we're looking for an associate minister, we actually pull the data from like Planning Center, and you can pull all of the directors, look at those menu of people. Or if we're looking for somebody that's just more of an organizational or administrative level, we look for the leaders, and we can look through, that pool of people. So I think that's a widely used process. I don't know, but I just wanted to throw that out there as a possibility that might help other churches as well.
I love that. Hey, let me ask you a question, Joe. When you guys, as people are kind of, I guess, working their way through the ranks, obviously there's fewer thinkers, fewer at the leadership level than there are at the organizer and the doer level. Are you having a hard time keeping people, once you go, hey, this person is an awesome organizer, but there's obvious leadership gifts and we'd love to bump them up someday? Are you losing those people at all to other places, kind of your high horsepower people, or are you pretty good about keeping them in? And if you're keeping them in, I'd love to know how you're doing that. You understand?
Yeah, well, keeping them in what sense?
Just like keeping them in your organization, in your network. So if you got, hey, we got up and coming kids pastor, really could be an executive pastor for us 5 years from now, but he feels like he's ready now, or she feels like she's ready now, and they want to go somewhere else. Are you doing a good job of retaining those people, or do you say, no, we're actually releasing them faster than we probably want to at this point? Or is that even?
Yeah, I definitely say we see that, but we kind of celebrate the kingdom wins. So if they do go somewhere else, we've got a pretty broad network of daughter churches or sent churches or partner churches that they're going to. We celebrate that. We're okay with that, knowing that, hey, in what we're projecting, we're going to be here and ready for that role down the road. And that person may swing back and boomerang. We don't know, or it might be somebody else. But the pressure to try to hold on to people seems to bite us in the end more than kind of help us,
Sure. Okay.
Awesome stuff, guys. Love the traction that we're getting, and love the engagement that we have with this, and love hearing from each of you guys. Do we have any other final questions before we wrap up today? And I don't want to end too early. If you guys still have stuff that's looming in your mind, or thoughts that you guys have, again, we'd love to hear just what you do, even if it's not a question. We'd love to hear what you guys partake in, or best practices that you guys have.
Chris, I'd have one more question, just something that you said in passing. I love the inclusive idea of the interview process, even allowing other admins to kind of interview future admins. So are you guys ever kind of caught in that situation where you guys feel it's the right person, but then some of your team members didn't necessarily agree with that decision? And when you move forward with the hire, does that kind of create a dissension that you've got to deal with? How do you navigate that?
A little bit. I would say we tend to be despite what I described, we tend to be a pretty top-down organization, which, frankly, for me works well, because I get to make a lot of the decisions if I want. But yeah, no, there are absolute, I'd say it's less from the executive level saying, we want to hire this person, and other people saying, no, we don't want to hire them. And so do we hire them? Do we not hire them? I'd say it's more the other way around, where we might not be as high on someone, but we really do want to turn the tables. We really do want to flatten out and trust our youth guy or our kids guy or whomever. So if they've got an admin person, you go, oh my goodness, I just know they're going to be a train wreck, because we've seen them, they're not going to be able to do it. At this point, we kind of let them hang themselves a little bit, and we give long severances, because we'll never say this as an organization, but I'm just saying from my personal, we've kind of done that person wrong by bringing them on the team, because I'm not like I'm a sayer or anything like that where I can see what's going to happen in the future, but you kind of get the feel like, I don't know if it's going to work out. And so this person left a great job or a great situation to come here, and now 6 months later, 12, 14 months later, they're out. So I would say it's more as we try to kind of invert the pyramid a little bit, our staff has made some hires that I'd say aren't as quality, aren't as good, and we've kind of let them learn from their mistakes a little bit. As a result of that, we're re-centralizing the hiring process, and I'd say give me about 3 months, and I'd love to come back on and most of what I talked about will still be there, but I could give a little 15-minute update on what we're doing, because we actually want to change a little bit to where Central clears everyone on the character and the competency side, and then on the chemistry side, that's when the campus or the department from Central then gets to make their pick. And so we're finally getting to the point where more often than not, we'll have 2 or 3 candidates for a job rather than, okay, anyone want to come work here kind of thing. So we're finally having a couple candidates at a time. Now we're just trying to convince, whether it be a campus pastor, a department head, let's interview 2 or 3 people at a time, and then we'll clear them all, or they might, okay, of these 3, these 2 would be good, and we'll make a recommendation out to campus, and then the campus will hire. So we still want them to have the ultimate ability to hire or not hire someone, because they've got to own their decision. Because if I tell them, hey, you're going to have this person, and they don't like them, well, there's no ownership in the decision. They're going to fire them if they can. So we're trying to invert it right now. It's a little messy at times, and we're getting better at it. But no, we don't. It's not a lot from SLT or executive down. It's more from the lower teams coming up to us, and that sounds bad, but you know what I'm saying. And them making poor hires, or hires that just we could have done better with. And we're just not. I don't think we're always thinking big enough as an organization in some of the hires we make. And so we're trying to correct that right now.
Thanks.
Hey, Chris, I just want to say thanks for the information. I've been a pastor here at a small church for 15 years, and recently resigned, and really was part of this today just to say, well, where am I as far as other churches? What are they looking for? So it's been insightful. I'm, by your definition, certainly a doer, and explain some of the frustrations I've had here over the years as far as, boy, why aren't we just growing? Why aren't we doing this? Well, because I'm doing it all. That's why. I mean, that's an obvious statement, and I'm knowing that, but it's just, so it validates a lot of stuff it validates in my mind and heart a lot of what you said, and really thought of it's time to resign has just really been more solidified in my heart. So thanks for the information. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, my pleasure. Mike, good luck on your search and all that. Well, last thing I guess I would say is, if any of you want to dialogue more one-on-one and not be a video chat, I mean, Eric's going to send out a follow-up on this, and so he can send you my contact information. I'm happy to talk to anyone as long as they want. Again, we do not have it right. I think we're messy at times, but we're figuring some things out as we go, and I'd love to pick your brain too at times. So just if you want to talk more, I'm happy to do it one-on-one or in a group setting as well. So thanks for the opportunity to talk, and I hope this was helpful.
Thank you, Pastor Chris, for taking time today. Thank you guys for tuning in, leaning in, like Pastor Chris said, that's a term that we use here, but leaning into what we're doing through the network. Love having you guys a part. Love hearing what you're doing. Love hearing what you're experiencing in your churches. And we wish you guys all the best. Again, we're here to be a resource to you guys. We're here to serve you. If there's anything that we can do, please feel free, like Pastor Chris said, reach out, let us know. We're here to serve you. But we'd love to hear some wins from you guys down the road. Give us feedback, let us know. But we're always here for you guys. So hope to see you guys tuning in again at a future LeaderCast. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.
All right, thanks.